The fluorescent lights of the small-town courthouse reflected harshly off the polished tiles as I made my way down the empty hallway. Each click of my heels echoed in the silence, marking time like a metronome counting down to the inevitable confrontation. The manila folder in my hands contained documents that would change everything: bank statements, loan records, transfer receipts. Proof that I, Victoria Harlow, the daughter they'd all dismissed, had saved the entire Harlow legacy. My phone buzzed in my pocket, my sister Elaine calling for the 5th time that morning. I silenced it without looking, knowing exactly what she'd say. The same things she'd been saying for the last week. How I was betraying the family. How I needed to let father handle his own problems. How I was only doing this to hurt them all. But she wasn't there 3 months ago when father's creditors started circling like vultures. When mother began quietly moving her personal possessions to her sister's house. When my younger brother Timothy started applying to state colleges instead of the Ivy Leagues he'd always dreamed of attending. None of them had been there. But I had. I pushed open the heavy oak door of courtroom C, the slight resistance reminding me of all the thresholds I'd crossed to reach this point. Inside, my family was already seated in the gallery. Mother, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that did nothing to hide the exhaustion etched into her face. Elaine, ramrod straight in her designer suit, eyes forward, refusing to acknowledge my entrance. Timothy, hunched and uncertain, shooting me glances that mingled accusation with relief. And then there was father. Harrison Harlow sat at the defendant's table, every inch the proud businessman even now. His steel-gray hair was perfectly trimmed, his Italian suit impeccable. Anyone looking at him would never suspect that, until recently, his financial empire had been collapsing around him, buried under a mountain of debt that threatened to swallow our family whole. His attorney whispered something in his ear, and father turned. Our eyes met across the room. There was no warmth in his gaze, no gratitude, only cold calculation as he assessed me like one of his business prospects. Even now, he couldn't see me as a daughter. Only as either an asset or a liability. You shouldn't be here, Elaine hissed as I slid into the seat beside Timothy. Haven't you done enough? I looked at my sister, 4 years older, always father's perfect mirror, and saw the fear behind her anger. I'm exactly where I need to be. All rise, the bailiff called out. The Honorable Judge Eleanor Winters presiding. We stood as the judge entered, a stern woman whose reputation for fairness was matched only by her intolerance for wasting the court's time. She settled into her seat, reviewed the papers before her, then peered over her reading glasses. I understand we have a motion to dismiss the charges against Harrison Harlow, she stated, her tone neutral. On what grounds? Harrison's attorney stepped forward. Your Honor, new evidence has come to light showing that all debts in question have been paid in full. The complainants have withdrawn their claims against my client. Judge Winters raised an eyebrow. Is this correct, Mr. Sheffield? The prosecuting attorney nodded, looking slightly bewildered. Yes, Your Honor. The creditors have confirmed full payment of all outstanding debts. However, the state wishes to note that the source of these funds remains unclear, and we have concerns about. Unless you're suggesting further criminal activity, Mr. Sheffield, those concerns are irrelevant to these proceedings, Judge Winters cut in. If the debts have been satisfied and the complainants have withdrawn their claims, then the charges of fraud and financial malfeasance cannot stand. She glanced at her calendar. The case against Harrison Harlow is dismissed. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a finality that reverberated through the room. Father's shoulders sagged slightly, a small tell that only someone who had studied him as carefully as I had would notice. Relief, not triumph. He hadn't expected this outcome. Of course he hadn't. He still didn't know. His attorney clapped him on the shoulder, and the small group of family and business associates converged around him, offering congratulations like he'd engineered this salvation himself. Mother embraced him stiffly, her relief evident but tempered by the strain of recent months. Elaine was already on her phone, no doubt calling her socialite friends to announce father's vindication. Only Timothy seemed unsure how to react, hanging back at the periphery of the celebration. I remained seated, watching the performance unfold. I'd seen this show before, the Harlow family closing ranks, projecting strength and success while ignoring the rot at the foundation. It was a script I had memorized growing up, though I'd never been given more than a bit part. Father's gaze found mine again across the courtroom. A crease formed between his eyebrows, confusion giving way to suspicion. He excused himself from his well-wishers and made his way toward me, his attorney trailing behind him. "Victoria," he said, my name sounding foreign on his lips. Had it really been so long since he'd addressed me directly? "I'm surprised to see you here." "Are you?" I stood, clutching the manila folder tighter. "I thought you might want to know how those debts disappeared." His expression hardened. "If you have information pertinent to my case." "It's not a case anymore, is it?" "Thanks to me." The attorney cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately." Father nodded curtly. "My office." 1 hour. It wasn't a request. As he turned to leave, Timothy approached, hesitation in every step. "Vic," he said, using the nickname I hadn't heard in years. "What's going on?" I looked at my younger brother, 18, brilliant, and so desperate for father's approval that he'd been willing to sacrifice his dreams when the money ran out. The only one who had ever tried to bridge the gulf between me and the rest of the family. "Justice," I said simply. "Or something like it." His eyes widened slightly, understanding dawning. "The money, it was you?" I nodded. "But how? Why?" "After everything, not here," I cut him off gently. "We'll talk later." He started to say something else, but Elaine appeared at his elbow, her perfectly manicured hand closing around his arm. "Mother wants to take everyone to lunch to celebrate," she said, pointedly excluding me from everyone. Her eyes narrowed. "What did you say to father?" "The truth," I replied. "Something this family has always found difficult to swallow." Her nostrils flared. "You've always been so dramatic, Victoria. If you're just here to stir up trouble." "I'm here because $3 million doesn't materialize out of thin air," I interrupted. "And father knows it." "So do you?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. "What are you talking about?" "Ask him," I suggested. "I'm sure he'll tell you everything over your celebratory lunch." I brushed past her, not waiting for a response. As I pushed through the courthouse doors into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt lighter than I had in years. No matter what happened next, the truth was finally going to come out. And Harrison Harlow would have to face the one thing he'd never been able to control, me. The Harlow building stood in the center of downtown, a 20-story testament to my father's ambition. Its steel and glass facade reflected the afternoon sun, making it appear as though the entire structure was aflame. Appropriate, given what was about to happen inside. I stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the uncertain girl who had left home 7 years ago, replaced by someone with clear eyes and a straight spine. someone who had built her own success while her father's crumbled. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the familiar reception area of Harlow Investments. The receptionist, a new one, not the woman who had watched me grow up, looked up with a practiced smile. "May I help you?" Victoria Harlow to see Harrison Harlow. Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh. Miss Harlow. Of course. Your father is expecting you. Please, go right in." The corner office was exactly as I remembered it, expansive windows overlooking the city, walls lined with awards and photographs documenting Harrison Harlow's ascent. Family pictures were notably absent. Business success was the only legacy that mattered to him. Father was standing at the window, back to the door, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. He didn't turn when I entered. "Close the door," he instructed. I did so, then took a seat without waiting for an invitation. The manila folder rested in my lap, a weight I was eager to unburden. "Explain yourself," he said, finally turning to face me. I raised an eyebrow. "No congratulations? No thank you for saving your company, your reputation, your freedom?" His jaw tightened. "I don't know what game you're playing, Victoria, but I won't be manipulated." Manipulated. I savored the word. Interesting choice. I opened the folder and removed the top document, a bank statement showing the transfer of $3 million from my accounts to a holding company that had then paid off his debts one by one. $3,142,618, I recited. "That's what it cost to save you from prison." A bargain, really, considering what was at stake. "Your lawyer can confirm the money trail." I made sure it was transparent enough for the courts but obscured enough to give you time to process privately. Father's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "I earned it." I met his gaze steadily. "Surprised? The daughter you said would never amount to anything built a tech company worth 8 figures. The one you told wasn't smart enough for business managed to do what you couldn't, turn a profit in a failing economy." Something flickered across his face, disbelief, possibly respect, quickly suppressed. "Why? After all this time, why would you do this?" It was the question I'd asked myself countless times over the past months, as I liquidated investments and redirected funds meant for my company's expansion. The answer had never been simple. "Not for you," I said. "For Mother, who doesn't deserve to lose everything because of your pride. For Timothy, who should go to the college of his choice without worrying about money. For the family name that, despite everything, I still carry. But not for Elaine," he noted. I smiled thinly. "Elaine made her choice a long time ago. She's your daughter in every way that matters." He set his glass down and moved to sit behind his massive desk, as though the physical barrier might help him regain control of the conversation. "What do you want in return?" The question of a businessman, not a father, I observed. But I'll answer it anyway. I want the truth acknowledged. I want the family to know exactly where their salvation came from. I want you to admit that you were wrong about me. And if I refuse? I leaned forward. You won't. Because while I was investigating your finances, I found things your creditors missed. Things the prosecutor would be very interested to see. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on all your creative accounting. His eyes narrowed. You're blackmailing me. I prefer to think of it as leveraging my position, I countered. Another business tactic I learned from watching you. A long silence stretched between us, decades of resentment and misunderstanding crystallized in this moment. Finally, he spoke. Your mother and siblings are waiting at Marcello's. Join us for lunch, and we'll discuss terms. It wasn't an apology or an admission, but it was a concession. From Harrison Harlow, that was significant. I stood, gathering my folder. I have a meeting with investors at 3. I can give you 90 minutes. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Victoria. I paused, hand on the doorknob. The company you built. What's it called? Phoenix Solutions, I replied without turning. Appropriate, he murmured, almost to himself. I smiled as I closed the door behind me. Yes, it was. Rising from the ashes of what he'd tried to destroy. Marcello's was my father's restaurant of choice for important business meetings, exclusive enough to impress, with private rooms for conversations that required discretion. The maitre d' recognized me immediately, his surprise quickly masked by professional courtesy. Miss Harlow. Your family is waiting in the private dining room. I followed him through the main restaurant, aware of the curious glances from other diners. The prodigal daughter returns. No doubt the local gossip mill would be working overtime by evening. The private dining room fell silent as I entered. Mother sat beside father at the head of the table, her composure restored now that the immediate crisis had passed. Elaine was to father's right, her husband Matthew beside her. Timothy sat alone on the left side, his place sitting next to an empty chair obviously intended for me. Victoria, mother said, rising to greet me. Her embrace was stiff but not unwelcoming. I'm glad you could join us. Elaine didn't bother with pretense. What's she doing here? I invited her, father replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. Victoria has something to discuss with the family. I took my seat beside Timothy, who gave me a small, encouraging smile. The waiter appeared to take drink orders, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. Once he had gone, father cleared his throat. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that today's legal victory wasn't the result of my attorney's efforts or a judicial error. The charges were dropped because the debts were paid in full. Mother looked confused. But how? You said there was no way to. Victoria paid them, father interrupted. All of them. The silence that followed was absolute. Elaine recovered first. That's impossible. Where would she get that kind of money? From my company, I answered. Phoenix Solutions. We developed a secure payment processing system that's being adopted by major online retailers. Last year's valuation put us at just under 20 million. Timothy let out a low whistle. Holy shit, Vic. That's incredible. Language, mother admonished automatically, but her eyes never left my face. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have done that? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. At the family dinners I wasn't invited to? The holidays where my calls went unanswered? The graduation ceremony no one attended? That's not fair, Elaine protested. You're the one who left. I left, I agreed, because I was told there was no place for me in this family. That I would never be good enough. That my ideas were worthless and my ambitions laughable. I looked directly at father. You said, and I quote, "You're not what this family needs, Victoria. Until you learn your place, don't bother coming back." Mother gasped softly. Harrison, you didn't. It was a different time, father said, his discomfort evident. Victoria and I had disagreements about her future. Disagreements? I laughed. Is that what we're calling it now? You threw me out because I wouldn't abandon my tech project to work at the company. Because I dared to suggest that financial institutions needed to adapt to changing technologies. You said my ideas would never amount to anything. Clearly, I was wrong, Father admitted, the words obviously difficult for him. Elaine shook her head in disbelief. So you paid off his debts, just like that? After 7 years of no contact? Why? What do you want? Perhaps, Matthew interjected, speaking for the first time, Victoria simply wanted to help her family in a time of need. Elaine shot her husband a look that could have frozen fire. No one does something like this without expecting something in return. You're right about that, I agreed. I do want something. The waiter returned with our drinks and took lunch orders, the formal choreography of fine dining at odds with the tension around the table. When he left, all eyes returned to me. I want acknowledgement, I said simply. Of what I've accomplished. Of the fact that I was right. Of the irony that the daughter who was never good enough is the one who saved this family from disgrace. Father's expression was unreadable, but I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes, the weighing of pride against pragmatism, of past resentments against present realities. Your success speaks for itself, he said finally. Whatever our past disagreements, it's clear that you've proven yourself in the business world. The family acknowledges your achievement and is grateful for your intervention. It wasn't the emotional reconciliation some might have hoped for, but from Harrison Harlow, it was significant. An admission of error, however oblique. There's more, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. I want a place on the Harlow Investments board. Elaine made a strangled noise. You can't be serious. You abandoned the company years ago. I didn't abandon anything, I corrected. I was pushed out. And now I own enough of Harlow Investments debt to have a say in its future. Father's eyebrows rose slightly. You didn't just pay the debts. You bought them. I nodded. Converting them to equity was the financially prudent choice. I now own approximately 27% of Harlow Investments. Not controlling interest, but enough to have a significant voice. A voice that could no longer be silenced or dismissed. Timothy laughed suddenly, earning startled looks from everyone at the table. Sorry, he said, not sounding sorry at all. It's just, this is amazing. Vic outmaneuvered all of you, and you didn't even see it coming. This isn't a game, Timothy, Elaine snapped. No, it's business, he replied, still grinning. And Vic just pulled off the kind of deal Father would have bragged about for years if he'd done it himself. Mother reached across the table to take my hand, her touch hesitant but genuine. I'm sorry, Victoria. For everything. We should have supported you, believed in you. Her apology was unexpected, a sudden crack in the facade of family unity I'd grown up with. Mother had never openly contradicted Father before, not even when his treatment of me bordered on cruelty. Thank you, I said, squeezing her hand briefly before releasing it. Father cleared his throat. A board position can be arranged. We'll need to discuss terms, of course. Of course, I agreed. My lawyers will contact yours to work out the details. The waiter arrived with our meals, and the conversation shifted to safer topics, Timothy's college plans, an upcoming charity event Mother was organizing, industry gossip. I answered questions about my company when asked, providing enough information to satisfy curiosity without revealing strategic details. Throughout the meal, I felt Father watching me, reassessing, recalculating. After dessert, he tapped his water glass with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. I'd like to propose a toast, he announced, lifting his scotch. To Victoria, whose success reminds us that the Harlow determination isn't limited to the male line. Welcome back to the fold. It was as close to an apology as he would ever come. I raised my own glass, accepting the gesture for what it was worth. To new beginnings. As we clinked glasses, I caught Elaine's gaze across the table. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She'd been father's heir apparent for 7 years, unchallenged in her position as the favored child. My return, and the power I now wielded, threatened the hierarchy she'd grown comfortable with. The dynamic had shifted, and we both knew it. Father needed me now in a way he never had before. Not just for my money, but for the expertise and connections I brought to the table. For the first time in my life, I was negotiating from a position of strength. I should get going, I said, checking my watch. My investors are waiting. I'll walk you out, Timothy offered, standing quickly. In the restaurant lobby, away from the rest of the family, he gave me the genuine hug I'd been missing. I can't believe you did all this, he said. It's like something out of a movie. It wasn't about revenge, I told him. Not entirely, anyway. He grinned. Just mostly, then? I did it for you too, I admitted. I know how much Princeton means to you. His expression sobered. You shouldn't have had to save us. Father's mistakes weren't your responsibility. Maybe not. But family is complicated, Timmy. He groaned at the childhood nickname. I'm 18, Vic. No one calls me Timmy anymore. I do, I countered, smiling. Big sister privileges. His answering smile faded quickly. Are you really coming back? To the company, I mean? In a limited capacity, I said. Phoenix is still my priority, but I have a stake in Harlow Investments now. I intend to protect it. He nodded, understanding the subtext. I would be watching, making sure father didn't make the same mistakes again, ensuring that Timothy's future was secure. You should come over for dinner sometime, he suggested. See the house again. A lot's changed. Some things haven't, I noted. No, he agreed. But some things have. And some things are changing now. He was right about that. The dynamics of the Harlow family would never be the same again. The question was whether the change would heal old wounds or create new ones. I'll call you, I promised, hugging him once more before stepping out into the afternoon sunshine. My driver was waiting at the curb, the sleek black car a reminder of how far I'd come from the scared young woman who had left town with nothing but a duffel bag and determination. I glanced back at the restaurant windows, where I could see father watching from the private dining room. Our eyes met briefly. He nodded, a gesture that might have been respect. I returned the nod, then slid into the car, ready to face whatever came next. On my own terms. The next morning, I arrived at the Phoenix Solutions offices just after 7, beating even my dedicated development team. I needed the quiet time to gather my thoughts before the day's meetings, especially the afternoon board session where I would brief my colleagues on my investment in Harlow Investments. My assistant, Mia, appeared at 8 with coffee and a concerned expression. The Harlow family is all over the business news this morning, she reported, placing a latte on my desk. Your father is giving interviews about the company's new direction and family-centered leadership approach. He mentioned you specifically. I raised an eyebrow. What did he say? That Phoenix Solutions represents the future of secure financial technology, and that bringing you onto the Harlow board is part of a strategic realignment. He also hinted at a potential partnership between the companies. I picked up my coffee, hiding my surprise behind the rim of the cup. Father moving so quickly and publicly was unexpected. He was making it clear to everyone that I was back in the Harlow fold, whether I wanted that broadcasted or not. Interesting, I murmured. Is it true? Mia asked. About the partnership? Nothing has been decided, I replied, which was technically accurate. I hadn't agreed to anything beyond a board seat. But the situation is evolving. Mia hesitated. There's something else. Elaine Harlow has been calling since 6. She says it's urgent. I sighed. Put her through next time she calls. The phone rang almost immediately, as though Elaine had been watching the building. Mia gave me a sympathetic look as she transferred the call. Victoria, Elaine began without preamble, we need to talk. Privately. Can we meet? I have meetings until. This can't wait, she interrupted. It's about Father's announcement. I checked my schedule. I can give you 30 minutes at 11. My office. Fine. She hung up without another word. The morning passed in a blur of project updates and investor calls. At 11:15, Mia buzzed to let me know Elaine had arrived early. Send her in, I instructed. Elaine entered as though she owned the place, her critical gaze sweeping over the modern office. So this is Phoenix Solutions, she remarked. Smaller than I expected. This is the executive floor, I corrected. The development team occupies the 2 floors below us, and we're expanding to the 5th floor next month. She made a non-committal sound, taking a seat opposite my desk. You've done well for yourself. It wasn't quite a compliment, but it was the closest thing to approval she'd ever offered. I inclined my head in acknowledgement. What did you want to discuss, Elaine? She crossed her legs, smoothing her skirt, a habitual gesture when she was uncomfortable. Father's announcement took us all by surprise. He didn't consult the board before suggesting a partnership with Phoenix. That does sound like him, I observed. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't a joke, Victoria. He's talking about integrating your payment system into our banking platform, possibly acquiring a stake in Phoenix. Did you put him up to this? I did nothing of the sort, I replied honestly. The board position was my only condition for the debt arrangement. Then why is he doing this? She sounded genuinely confused. I considered my sister carefully. Elaine had always been Father's most devoted acolyte, mirroring his attitudes and approaches even when they cost her. She had shaped herself into what she thought he wanted, ruthless, uncompromising, focused solely on the bottom line. It had never occurred to her to forge her own path. Perhaps, I suggested, he sees the business value of what Phoenix has built. Or perhaps he's trying to save face by making it seem like he planned this all along. She frowned. You think this is about his pride? Claiming your success as somehow part of his vision? Wouldn't be the first time, I pointed out. Elaine fell silent, processing this. After a moment, she asked, What are you going to do? Evaluate any partnership proposal on its merits, I answered. Just like any other business decision. And if it doesn't have merit? Then I'll decline. She looked up sharply. You'd turn him down? Publicly? If necessary, I confirmed. My company's interests come first. A strange expression crossed her face, something almost like envy. You really don't care what he thinks anymore, do you? I care about building something worthwhile, I said. About making good on the potential he couldn't see. That's not the same as seeking his approval. But you came back, she pressed. You paid his debts. Why do that if you didn't care? It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself many times over the past months. I did it because I could, I said finally. Because despite everything, you're still my family. And because sometimes the best revenge is showing someone exactly what they threw away. Elaine flinched slightly at that. Is that what this is? Revenge? No, I said after a moment. It's redemption. For all of us, if we're willing to reach for it. She stood abruptly. I should go. I have a lunch meeting. I rose as well. Elaine. She paused at the door. I'm not your enemy. I never was. Her shoulders tensed. I know that. I don't know how to do this. How to be sisters again after everything. Neither do I admitted. But maybe we can figure it out. Step by step. She nodded once, then left, her uncertainty lingering in the air behind her. Mia appeared in the doorway moments later. Everything okay, boss? Getting there, I said. What's next on the agenda? Your father called while you were with Elaine. He wants to meet this evening to discuss the partnership proposal. Of course he did. Not even 24 hours, and Harrison Harlow was already maneuvering to regain control of the narrative. Tell him I'm available at 7. His office. Mia raised an eyebrow. You're going to him? Not making him come to you? I smiled. Know when to press an advantage, Mia, and when to extend an olive branch. This is a bit of both. The rest of the day passed in productive focus, the afternoon board meeting going more smoothly than anticipated. My colleagues were cautiously optimistic about the potential Harlow partnership, though all agreed that any deal would need to protect Phoenix's autonomy and intellectual property. At 6:30, I found myself back in the Harlow building elevator, rising to the top floor for the second time in as many days. This time, however, I wasn't approaching as a supplicant or an accuser, but as an equal. The receptionist waved me through immediately. He's expecting you, Miss Harlow. Father was standing at the window again, but this time he turned when I entered. Victoria. Thank you for coming. He gestured to a small conference table rather than his imposing desk, a subtle acknowledgement that this was a meeting between equals. Can I offer you a drink? Water is fine, I said, taking a seat. He poured 2 glasses from a crystal decanter, then joined me at the table. I imagine you've seen this morning's news. Hard to miss, I replied. You've been busy. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. When opportunity presents itself, one must act decisively. And is that what this is? An opportunity? Isn't it? He slid a folder across the table. The preliminary partnership proposal. I'd appreciate your honest assessment. I opened the folder, scanning the terms with practiced efficiency. The proposal was surprisingly equitable, a limited integration of Phoenix's payment system with Harlow's banking platform, with appropriate licensing fees and profit-sharing arrangements. No attempt to acquire control or dilute my ownership. I looked up, unable to hide my surprise. This is reasonable. You sound shocked, he observed. I expected you to try to absorb Phoenix. To bring me back under your control. He shook his head. That would be short-sighted. Phoenix thrives precisely because it isn't weighed down by the traditions and restrictions of an established financial institution. Trying to fold it into Harlow Investments would kill what makes it valuable. I studied him carefully. That's not how you would have approached this 7 years ago. No, he agreed. 7 years ago, I would have demanded control. would have insisted that Phoenix bend to Harlow's way of doing things. He took a sip of water. 7 years ago, I was wrong about a lot of things. Coming from Harrison Harlow, this was as close to an apology as I was likely to get. I decided to accept it as such. I'll need my team to review the proposal thoroughly, but preliminarily, I think we have a foundation to build on. He nodded, visibly relieved. Good. That's good. An awkward silence descended, neither of us quite sure how to navigate this new territory. For so long, our relationship had been defined by conflict and disappointment. Cooperation was uncharted ground. Timothy told me about your company's origins, Father said finally. How you built the first prototype in your apartment while working 3 jobs. How you convinced that venture capital firm to take a chance on you when all you had was a concept and determination. I blinked in surprise. Tim knows all that? He's followed your career closely. Kept a file of news articles, press releases. He's always believed in you, even when he broke off. Even when you didn't, I finished for him. Father looked away. I made mistakes, Victoria. With the company, yes, but more importantly, with you. I was so convinced that I knew what was best that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. A daughter who wasn't a carbon copy of you, I suggested. A daughter who was more like me than I could admit, he corrected. With your own vision and the courage to pursue it, regardless of what anyone else thought. Including me. I sat back, absorbing this unexpected acknowledgement. That must have been difficult for you to say. A hint of his old sternness returned. Don't push your luck. But there was no real heat behind the words, and the corner of his mouth twitched upward, the closest thing to a smile I'd seen from him in years. There's something else we need to discuss, he said, his expression growing serious again. The board position. If you're going to take it, there are things you should know about the company's current situation. I leaned forward. Such as? The debt you paid was only part of the problem. Harlow Investments has lost ground in key growth sectors over the past decade. We've been slow to adapt to technological changes, resistant to new market approaches. I'm aware, I said dryly. He acknowledged the point with a slight nod. What you may not know is that several board members have been pushing to sell to Meridian Financial. The cash influx from your debt payment has bought us time, but the underlying structural issues remain. Meridian Financial was Harlow's largest competitor, a corporate giant that had been trying to absorb the company for years. If they succeeded, the Harlow name would disappear from the financial world. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I need an ally on the board who understands both traditional finance and technological innovation. Someone who can help chart a new course for Harlow Investments. I studied him, looking for signs of manipulation. And you think that someone is me? I know it is. He held my gaze steadily. You were right 7 years ago, Victoria. We needed to adapt, to embrace new technologies and approaches. I was too proud to see it then, too invested in doing things the way they'd always been done. And now? Now I'm offering you what I should have offered you then, a chance to help shape the future of Harlow Investments. Not as my subordinate, but as a partner. The irony wasn't lost on me. 7 years ago, I had begged for this opportunity, for Father to see my value, to acknowledge my vision, to welcome me as a partner rather than dismiss me as a disappointment. I had dreamed of this moment, cried over its impossibility, and eventually learned to live without it. And now, here it was, offered freely, wrapped in humility I'd never thought Harrison Harlow capable of expressing. I'll consider it, I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. But I need time. This partnership between us, both business and personal, will require foundations more solid than one conversation can build. Father nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Take all the time you need. The door is open. As I gathered my things to leave, he spoke again. Victoria? I paused, looking back at him. Thank you. Not just for the financial rescue, but for. He gestured vaguely, struggling with words that had never come easily to him. For giving this family another chance. The sunset painted the city in amber and gold as I walked to my waiting car. My phone buzzed, a text from Timothy, everything okay? I smiled, typing back, getting there. In the distance, the Phoenix Solutions building stood tall among its neighbors, its modern glass facade reflecting the dying light. Beside it, the older but no less imposing Harlow building remained a testament to a different era, both structures standing firm despite the winds of change that had buffeted them. Perhaps, I thought, there was room for both, the traditional and the innovative, the established and the emerging, the past and the future, to not just coexist but strengthen each other. I had left home believing I had to choose between being Victoria and being a Harlow. Now, I understood that the strength to save my family had come precisely from being both. The car pulled away from the curb, carrying me forward into a future I had never imagined, one where wounds might finally begin to heal, and where the words not needed no longer defined my place in the family I had never stopped loving, despite everything.